Welcome to Real Women's Stories. I'm so pleased that you are joining me today. And if you are new to Real Women's Stories, then welcome and thank you so much for joining me. This is my coaching episode where I am featuring Mel Robbins' acclaimed book, The Let Them Theory. This is the 5th episode in the series. So if you are new to Real Women's Stories, then I would suggest that you go back and listen to the beginning of the coaching episodes, because it really explains what the Let Them Theory is, how we can use it. And I do refer to Mel's book quite a lot in these episodes. I'm so excited, but also a little bit sad, because I think we've only got a couple more episodes left in this particular series of the Let Them Theory. And I have learned so much, because obviously if I'm delivering you these coaching episodes, then I need to really dig deep and understand the theory and how we can use it in our lives. And also, you know, how Mel talks about it. So she's been in my ears and I've been reading her book day and night to really try and understand how I can use it in my life and how my clients can use it in their lives. And these coaching episodes are resources for you to use if you've never had coaching before. Hopefully it should give you an insight into my style of coaching, the way that I speak and the way that I communicate. You know, because this is one of the last in the series, in this particular series where I'm featuring the Let Them Theory, I wanted to concentrate on a chapter of the book that resonated with me. And also, Mel actually says that this particular formula that she uses in this chapter of the book, it's chapter 14 and 15 if you do read her book, she has used it a lot with a lot of her clients, with her relationships that she's had in her own life, and it's one that really works. And she goes through a couple of formulas. So this chapter is about how to motivate people to change. So I'd like you to think about someone in your life who you want to change. Is there someone, a child, a partner, a friend who's in a bad relationship and you just see that, you know, it's not right for them? Is it a child that you're sort of looking at and you want them to get off their phone, get off their PlayStation, or just, you know, help you around the house, do a little bit more around the house? Or is it your partner? Do you want them to get involved more in the chores around the house? Or you might want somebody to look at their lifestyle. Are they not leading a particular healthy lifestyle? How's that going? So how has that going in terms of trying to motivate that person or people to make that change? Have you managed to motivate them? Or has it ended up with them kind of shutting down and closing off? You know, how's your behavior been? Are you constantly nagging at them or making noises and sounds, you know, making those big sighs when someone doesn't do something you want them to do? Why do you think that by you trying to motivate somebody to make a change, by making all this noise around them and by kind of having a go at them, and or even just asking them, you know, why don't you do this and why don't you do that? Why do you think that person isn't motivated to change? That's a bit of a question. Well, Mel talks about the science-backed information throughout her book. She talks about neuroscience. She refers to lots of doctors, and she's done a lot of research herself. And she claims that it's been proven that when we push someone to try and make a change, what do? They just push back. And when someone is not in the headspace to change, no matter how much motivation you try and give them, they just don't want to. Let's just think about that situation. You know, what if someone was, and they might be trying to get you to do something? What about you? Have you had a situation where you could reflect upon when someone's really been trying to get you to make a change and you're just not quite prepared to make that change or to do that thing for whatever reason? Do you think that conversation has made you want to do it? Do you think that that's made you go to the gym? Do you think that's made you stop vaping? Or do you think that's made you change your behavior? Because if somebody is trying to motivate us, and that means someone's trying to get us to make a change, It's not our decision to make a change. It's them wanting us to make a change. So then they have got control over, or we feel like they've got control over the decisions that we're making. And nobody likes to feel controlled, do they? Especially our kids, especially our partners, and especially our friends. So what happens now? You are speaking to them, you're trying to have conversations with them about it, you're making noises, and it's a little bit of a constant noise for that other person, and they're starting to retreat or they're pushing back. And now what's happening? You're getting frustrated, you're getting angry, and you're getting worried because you love that person. You want them to make a change for the best. You're thinking of it's all coming with good intentions. It's not coming from a bad place. And then that causes you stress, worry, anxiety, frustration. And often it can create a real conflict situation. And let's just face it, it's not a great situation to be in. You're trying to motivate them. You're trying to get them to make a change. They're just shutting down. You're now at loggerheads and nothing's working and nothing's changing. So what can we do? I thought about that question. And then I started obviously going through the chapters in Mel's book. And she basically says that, the most kind and caring and loving thing that we can do is to let them, because no amount of pushing is going to work. It just won't, because they're not ready to take action themselves. Your approach is backfiring. So let them be adults. Let them have their space to work it out for themselves, and let me release my control and think about how I can show up differently in this space. What is it that I can maybe say or do to try and influence that person? Mel says your approach is backfiring. Let them be adults and let them have their space to work out for themselves. And let me release my control back and think about how I can show up differently in this space. What is it that I can do to try and influence that person? She says, let them live their life. I like to read bits from Mel's book because it really kind of sums up exactly what I've been trying to say. And her words are so powerful. So I'm going to be reading an extract. So people do what they feel like doing. People only change when they are ready to make that change for themselves. Stop punishing them for not changing on your timeline. Stop trying to motivate them into doing something they clearly don't want to do. It's a waste of your time. It's stressing you out. It's ruining your relationship. It's not working. And most importantly, it is driving a wedge between the two of you. When you let them be, you're accepting them for who they are right now. Let them be on their own timeline. Let them fail at their career. Let them vape. Let them give up. Let them stay in that miserable relationship. Let them make promises they don't keep. Let them be messy. Let them live their life. And do you want to know what else you're saying? I trust you to figure it out. Then Mel goes on to say, but I'm sure you're wondering, if pressure doesn't work, what does? I said you couldn't change their behavior, but I never said you couldn't influence it. And this is where Let Me comes in and helps you unlock the power of your influence. So it's interesting. This is in two parts. So there are two chapters that cover this particular topic. The first one was how can we motivate people, which quite clearly we can't, because we've just discussed that we can't motivate people. We can't make people change. If they're not ready to change, we can't make them do it. We need to allow them to be who they are. What we can do is, as Mel says, we can try and influence them. So you see, this is the second part of this topic. This is let me unlock the power of influence. So it's all about looking about how, we can show up, how we can behave in situations. So we're letting the other person who we want to make that change, allowing them to let them be. And then we are going to start looking at how we can show up in the situations. Mel talks a lot about scientific backed evidence on human behavior in both of these chapters. So think about a great Netflix series or movie that someone's told you to watch. It makes you want to watch it, right? They've influenced you to watch this Netflix series because they're talking about how great it is and how exciting it is and what storyline it is. So people's behavior becomes contagious. So what if we mirror someone's behavior? Maybe we can show them how easy it is to make that change if we actually change our own behaviors. And if we actually model that behavior, maybe the other person would want to make those changes. It's a great way for someone else to see and believe that it's their idea, because you're not telling someone to do it. They're watching your reaction. They're watching how you're feeling. And then they suddenly feel attached to that feeling and they become motivated to that influential behavior that you're showing. Mel does say that you can't expect somebody else to make a change if you don't behave in that way too. And it could take some time. It could take 6 months or more. There's some prep work that Mel asks, that Mel recommends that we go through before we start using her formulas and the tools that she talks about in this particular topic. As part of this topic, Mel talks about some tools that she uses in order to get the other person to start thinking about the situation they're in. So she talks about 2 different tools. She explains how to use the ABC loop tool and how it works, and also the 5 whys when trying to influence people. So the first part is offloading. Why are we frustrated about the other person? So let's ask ourselves why. Why is that person's behavior bothering me? And it's called the 5 whys because once you have your answer, you then ask yourself again and again, why? Because once you start questioning yourself, and once you've given yourself an answer, if you start digging deep and working underneath the layers, and you'll find out exactly what's causing the frustration. And in most cases, it's because of us. It's because we want someone to change because we are worried, anxious, and frustrated that they won't. So I'd like you to ask yourself, think about a situation with a person and ask, why is it that that person's behavior is bothering you? Ask yourself why. Is it because you think that they're lazy and that they aren't doing enough stuff around the house? And then ask yourself again, why is it that it's bothering me that they're lazy? And why is it that it's bothering me that they don't do stuff around the house? It bothers me because I have to do more things then. It bothers me because I don't have enough time to myself. Why is it bothering me? Continue to ask yourself why. That's why it's called the 5 whys, because as you unpick the layers, you will realize that it's bothering you and upsetting you. It's not actually about the other person. It's about you. It's about how you're feeling, how worried you are, how frustrated you are, and how anxious you are. And then once you've kind of got it all out your system, then you can move on to the ABC loop tool. So we've now offloaded, we now know why we're feeling the way we are. It's our frustration, it's our anxieties. Now we're going to start approaching the other person, but we're going to do it differently this time because we're not going to try and motivate them to change. We're going to, first of all, A represents apologize. we are going to apologize for not understanding and for having a go at somebody and for constantly asking somebody to change, when what we should be doing is we should be asking them how they feel. So it's about apologizing and then asking questions. It shows that you're compassionate about that person by saying the words, I'm sorry for judging you. I'm sorry if you think that I've pressurized you. You've taken accountability for that. You've taken ownership of that. And now you can start asking those questions about how that person is feeling and why they're feeling the way that they do. So make sure you're in person and you have no distractions. Also, remember to ask open-ended questions. We actually do this a lot in coaching because what we want to do is we want to start somebody to start thinking deeply and clearly about how they're feeling. So Mel goes into more detail about this in her book. However, like I've said, in coaching, we ask questions to get the person to think about the answer. Because remember, we're all different. The way that we think is different. The way that we think about making changes are different. So make sure that you don't try and give your opinion, that you allow that person the space to answer the question about how they're feeling about a situation. And if they aren't sure, then why don't you ask them why? Why are you unsure about how you're feeling? You try and dig deep. Don't go on the attack. But this is to make sure that the person is thinking about the situation they're in. So the next part of the loop is B, and B is for back off. So you can sit there and observe someone's behavior. Focus on how you can stop trying to change it. Think about how you can make changes so the other person could potentially start modeling your behavior. Show them that it's easy, that it's fun. Let them figure it out. Let them make the changes for themselves. So by you going to the gym, for example, and coming in feeling energized and feeling great about yourself, that person's going to see how you're feeling and they're going to want some of that. They're going to want some of that feeling because, although we think the other person doesn't want to make a change, they probably do deep down inside because they know the change is going to be better for them. They just don't want to be told. So hopefully their behavior will start changing. And then finally, the C is for celebrate the progress. If they do go to the gym, it doesn't matter if they even stepped and went into the gym and they didn't even do anything. The fact that they've actually stepped in the gym, looked around them, had the confidence to go there, celebrate it, congratulate them. So, well done. Next time, maybe you're going for longer. Just because they may not have done exactly what you've done, it doesn't mean that you can't celebrate them. So that's the ABC loop. And the reason why it's called a loop is because, change takes time and they may not start to make those changes straight off. So you may well have to loop back to the beginning again. You may have to start apologizing, asking open-ended questions. You may need to back off and observe and focus on yourself and show the other person how good it is to make the change. So then they can model their behavior on you and they will think it's their idea. And remember, C is for celebrate. Celebrate their progress, no matter how big or small it is. So accept other people as they are and inspire them to change through their own behavior. Pressure just gives the worst result. It's your influence that can motivate someone else to change. I'd like to close off today's episode with the final passage that I'm going to read from Mel's book, which should kind of bring this whole theory together for you. When you say let them, you are accepting other people as they are. You're removing tension and pressure and letting them have control over the way they live their life. When you say let me, you use neuroscience to your advantage and you unlock your power of influence to motivate someone else to change. Let adults be adults and let your influence inspire them to change. I would really encourage you to go and read this book. It's fascinating. There's a lot more information that I haven't covered in terms of Mel's research and the neuroscience that she has used in order to create this book. I wouldn't be doing it justice if I tried to explain it. It is quite detailed, but definitely have a look at this and take the opportunity. We've got one more episode left of this particular series. So I will be sad, but I have learned so much from the Let Them theory. I've been able to use it in my life. I'm using it in my client's life. I just want to thank all of you for joining me for this episode and every episode that I have been recording of Real Women's Stories. It means so much to me to be building this community, and we are growing week on week. Please share this with your friends because, it could help someone. This is a free resource for everybody to use, for the community to use. If you feel that any of these episodes could help someone, if you feel that they might need coaching, but they don't really know how to navigate that journey or who to go to, share this episode with them, because using the Let Them theory in our lives is so powerful, and it has been life-changing for me. So I will leave you now to enjoy the rest of your week, and then I'll see you next week for my guest interview of Real Women's Stories.